Good evening and welcome to the July 25, 2023 Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors work session. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The little thing?
Yeah. Everybody on the agenda listed as present is here. Supervisor Orff is joining us on Zoom virtually. Announcements. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is destroyed after the minutes are approved. The meeting will be posted online on the Township YouTube channel. The link can be found on the Board of Supervisors page and on the Township website. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes, unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. And the first item of business is the Melbourne Hill Preliminary Earth Moving Agreement discussion. So just as a reminder, we've discussed this already twice before. Okay, right. Momentary pause for technical difficulties.
Enjoy.
All right.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so I I guess you talked with Colby.
That's correct.
So this is the third time
Yep.
we have talked about this, yes. And the applicant has already signed off on this latest version. So if it works for the board, we are good to go. At the last meeting, our regular meeting in July, the board asked basically for 3 major changes to it. The board wanted to, specify specifically the source of the fill, which we have nailed down to a single source. You wanted certification that the fill was clean, which they are providing, and we wanted, actually 4 things. Wanted to put a end date on the time that they can have the fill piles on this site, which is 5 years, which we have done, and we've increased the escrow to $20,000. The applicant agreed to all these changes. I did make the changes to the agreement, forwarded them to the applicant. Applicant had, signed off on it. So I believe in your packet today you have both a red line copy showing these most recent changes and a clean copy. So if you have any questions or issues with it, please let me know.
Thank you. And for the public, I'm just going to go through those changes in the document. So the first one, it says, developer has advised township that this clean soil and fill shall solely come from a development it is constructing in Richland Township, Bucks County, PA, called Twin Lakes. So that's the one thing. Developer shall provide township with a DEP-approved certification of clean fill, Form FP-001, for all the soil and fill imported to and stockpiled upon the property. Developer agrees that the earth-moving activities covered by this agreement shall be completed within 5 years of the date of this agreement, and any storage or stockpile of soil and fill created in accordance with this agreement shall be fully removed by developer within these 5 years. And then the last one is...
It's a little ways down.
Okay,
It's,
here it is.
yeah.
Under financial security section, developer shall contemporaneously with the execution of this agreement deposit with the township the sum of $20,000, which shall be held by the township in an escrow fund. So those were the 4 changes we asked for, and they have been included in the updated agreement. Are there any questions or comments or anything for Peter?
Junkyards, right? I also noticed you changed
in the agreement in a few places, just to make it very clear that you're referencing the fill source and you define what that is. So it's not like they can bring dirt in from some other fill source.
Right.
And dump it there. Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? No. Dan, do you have any questions or comments?
No, it seems like they lined up with the things we had made, requested at the prior meeting. So
Okay,
I think, that's a good thing.
okay, do you have something else?
I also wanted to note to the board that we've already received the escrow check.
Okay,
So
that's
that-
good.
That actually came last week.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns of Goodwill Road. Has anything being required with the PennDOT permit that apparently the applicant didn't have at the last meeting?
Not in this agreement, although I do believe the agreement does require them to comply with all other applicable permits and approvals.
We did advise the applicant that they need to provide us proof of that HOP before the waiver permit is issued.
Oh, good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay, it's my understanding that the developer wants to move forward, so are we going to vote on this today?
If the board wishes to, yes. It's on the agenda, so you certainly can move ahead with it.
Okay, is that okay with everybody that we vote on this today?
Yeah.
Okay. Would someone like to make the motion?
Sure, Chuck Geiser, I'll make the motion that we move to authorize the approval of the preliminary earth moving agreement for Melbourne Hill with select properties, and further authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the township.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we had Supervisor Yiser made the motion, Supervisor Sachs made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right. Omnibus ordinance number 2.
Who wants to lead it?
Normally I would lead, but these are all recommendations made by the planning commission. I wasn't at that meeting, so it's probably better for either Carol or Jason to kind of lead this
Okay,
conversation, and then I can chime in with you.
okay. Carol, are you prepared to lead this?
I believe I can.
Great, thank you.
At the last planning commission meeting, we reviewed a memorandum that was prepared by my office in consultation with SEOs that work for value engineering, and offered some comments. The planning commission agreed with those comments and included this memo in its recommendations to the board. And I went into some detail with the planning commission. I'll try to be more brief here. The first item was to repair or failed systems, and we recommended an adjustment to ordinance language to be clear that this applies to new construction, not to repair of failed septic systems. We don't want to slow down or inhibit a repair. The next thing we talked about is review process. That's really going to be an in-house thing that I'm sure can be worked out at staff level of who's going to do the review, and it's not part of the subdivision or home development. And again, I think you've got a manager that can work that out with staff. The third item that we noted was about resource protection, that some language should be added, that consistency with other ordinances or protection of natural resources may be part of what's considered in the evaluation of which system to choose. And we gave some examples here of why that would be beneficial. For example, there are situations where the selection of a lower ranked option might result in a system configuration or location that preserves trees, whereas a higher priority system might require clearing the area for a system installation. So we suggested incorporation of language that in the review of which system to select, they can also incorporate other aspects like the natural resources. Ranking of community systems, we just really concurred with, for the most part, with Peter's recommendation to put community systems near the bottom of the list because we have concerns that long-term operation and maintenance of community systems often ends up falling to a municipal government. So we concurred with that and kept those community systems ranked very low on the list. We note that DEP classifies on-lot systems as conventional, alternate, or experimental, and we explained what each of those categories is and suggested that perhaps this language be incorporated into the draft or into the final ordinance. The explanation of conventional, alternate, or experimental systems, they're defined here in this memo as they're defined in Chapter 73. Item 6, we've just noted that one of the systems listed in the draft text is an approved alternate system, but they don't make it anymore. And it highlights the fact that these systems and DEP's list can change. And so for that reason, in our recommended language on our listing of the order in which systems should be considered, we talk about alternate systems, including but not limited to, and list the systems under that, so that it leaves a little flexibility for which alternate systems can be selected as the approved list of systems evolves within DEP. And lastly was just a note that planning and permitting are treated differently with these systems. It was informational. I don't think that's necessarily relative to this conversation. So at the end of all that, in the draft ordinance text, we added some highlights of areas where we were suggesting some additional language be incorporated. The Planning Commission generally agreed with this with one exception. In the list of priorities for systems, we had individual stream discharge systems above community disposal systems, and the Planning Commission voted to move that line item down to just above holding tanks. That was a lot. I hope that wasn't too much.
So just to clarify that last point, we have a list of 13 methods, and so individual stream discharge used to be number 8, so it's now number 12?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I mean, does it really matter, because the first 8 of them are all individual anyway? So it's at the bottom of the individual. Isn't it kind of moot? Or am I missing
There are
something?
situations where the other systems aren't going to work, and that's sort of your last resort.
Yeah,
And you've had them in this township.
okay.
So, our inclination was to put it at the bottom of individual systems.
Okay.
But the planning commission felt that it should be otherwise, and it's certainly up to township officials how you would like to order these.
Yeah, the one concern with it moving them to the bottom, and I think actually my list had them at the bottom, is, you could get a situation where you're kind of forcing someone to put in a community system, which might lead to greater development of the property than if they had a chance of just putting an individual system in. I don't think that's likely to happen, but that might be the only issue with moving the stream discharge down below. I think I read somewhere, and I agree with it, the big issue with stream discharge is you really need to make sure they're maintained. And an individual stream discharge for a residence, the first person puts it in probably is going to maintain, they understand that the issues occur down the line when the third or fourth owner gets to it and doesn't fully appreciate what they have to do to appropriately maintain it. So, I think that's a good reason why you might want it to be pretty much near the end, due to those maintenance issues.
Okay. Yeah, you had it as number 12.
It's not, yeah, new number 12, yeah.
Well, I mean, he originally had it at 12.
Well, now it's back there.
Right.
Okay.
I'm all right with moving it down if we don't think it's going to somehow have an unintended consequence. Or if that's a low probability.
Carol, I have one question on the issue about repairing systems. Are we talking simply about repairing a system, or does that also include replacing a failing system? Because I think if you have an actual replacement, I would argue you would want to follow this schedule.
So, no, we are talking about actual replacement of the system. DEP, in their definition, uses the word repair. When a system has failed, it needs to be replaced, and that's what my SEOs were referencing. When a system has failed, it's an imminent public health hazard, and DEP and the property owner are going to be working together to come to the quickest possible solution that's the best solution for that property. And what my SEOs were saying is that they did not think it would be good for the township to be in the middle of that process and slowing it down. Because if it's got to go through a township, if it's got to come in for a township zoning review, that would add time to that process of making that repair. So unlike somebody who's doing a new development and financing that, that new house, or doing a subdivision and building multiple on-lot systems to sell those lots and sell those homes, when you're dealing with somebody with a failed system, that's usually an unexpected expense to that property owner. And I guess that's, in our mind, that's the place where you don't want to slow things down and throw up roadblocks. You want to see that unclean water resolved as quickly as possible. Hence the reason that both my SEOs recommended taking repair out of that language, exempting repair from that language.
Okay.
Is there any need to define any of the words in here? Because we've just said now that DEP views a repair as a replacement.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I will transmit to the solicitor the DEP definitions of each of these items to make sure that we're consistent with them.
Yeah.
Actually, in response to that, I think if you want to say anything, I think we just include the statement that we are going to follow the DEP definitions.
Okay.
Because we don't want to lay out a series of definitions here and then 5 years down
Right.
the line have DEP define them.
Yep.
In worst case scenario, us not realizing that, and then we're completely out of whack with DEP. The same goes to, the definitions of different type of systems. I think we just, if we want to have some statement regarding that, we say we're, we're following the DEP definitions of these technical terms.
And that makes a lot of sense, because every SEO that's going to be involved in designing these systems is going to be very familiar with those terms.
Yeah, I think that will take care of it, because otherwise it could be misunderstood. Okay.
So we'll just have a footnote referencing whatever it is, chapter 73. Is that it? All terms and definitions in this ordinance are consistent with chapter 73 or something like that, or this section. Okay.
Okay.
So that addresses what the planning commission said about the on-lot system ordinance. Is that, Jason, do you want to go into some of the other things?
Yeah. So one other item was they suggested moving the EAF, or the environmental adjustment factor paragraphs under each zoning district higher in the sections, instead of being listed last. Because they have concern that this would get missed or potentially get missed. their last ask would be, they wish to exclude tables 170-56C and 170-61C, which are for the R3 and R4 districts, to allow more time to review and not hold up the current ordinance draft. Since there was changes on both of those tables that they through their review they did not discuss.
When were those changes made? It must have been a while ago.
Yep,
In the original draft.
I mean, that was
Yeah.
months ago.
yep.
They focused on the R1 and R2 tables and didn't end up really getting to the R3 and R4 tables.
I'm just trying to remember, I mean, it was so long, I'm trying to remember what changes we did make.
There were a whole, this is even, I think it's even before we split it into two parts.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was my recollection, so it's just winding it way back.
I mean,
Just on both these 2 points, on the first point, I mean, no big deal where the sections go. I think traditionally, the way most ordinances are written, when you list a district and you're listing dimensional standards, you usually actually list those standards first. That's why those are listed as A in these two sections. The other two concerns I would have is if we start moving the sections around, I'm gonna have to go through the ordinance and make sure there's not references to the sections, because we're then going to change the
Yeah.
references. And then thirdly, to be honest, the EAFs only apply to subdivision and land developments. They're actually, the people who are gonna be paying attention to those things are the people who should know to look through the whole ordinance and make sure they got everything. They're the developers, they're the engineers for the developers, they're the attorneys for the developers. Your run-of-the-mill homeowner most likely is not doing a subdivision, most likely not doing a land development. So that section actually doesn't apply to them. So I don't really actually see why we want to put that first. It'd probably be better to have them last because they don't apply to probably the majority of people looking at the zoning ordinance. They only apply to subdivision and land developments, which is one of the original reasons why I kind of pulled them out and put them in that separate section. Because as it's currently written, when you first read the R1, R2 sections, you think, oh, I gotta go comply with those. And then only when you go to that section that lists those factors and you carefully read through it, you realize, oh, no, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not doing a subdivision, I'm not doing a land development. So I actually think having them at the end makes more sense because they don't apply every time, whereby the things in sections A, B, and C apply much more often than the environmental adjustment factors. So that being said, it's no big deal. It can be done. There's no legal reason one way or the other specifically to do it that way, but whatever the board wants.
yeah, I'm okay with leaving it there. I mean, if it's important, you could just maybe have, like, again, a reference to it somewhere, rather than reshuffling everything, if that would help. Regarding the R3 and the R4, I mean, we talked about this probably even last year. I'm reluctant to hold this up.
The one
For that
issue,
discussion.
If you hold it up and we move forward, we're gonna make it a third ordinance that we'll then have to prepare and advertise. So it does make it more expensive to cut those and take those out.
What would the board like to do regarding the R3 and R4 sections?
Well, I think the planning commission was recommending that we just remove the modifications to those tables and move forward with the ordinance.
So whether we remove it or not, it would then revert to the existing standards.
Yeah, they wouldn't change,
Right.
yeah. I mean, the concerns were legitimate, and I was aware of them, although the changes that I was interested in seeing are in there, but there were concerns about, the impervious surface in several situations of like double, are they allowable? And, the question was, how is that consistent with what we're trying to do, which is to try to, not have more runoff and not have more water to manage? And, nobody could really go back and say, hey, where did these things start from? Where did it all come from? They thought maybe John, our planner, had recommended it, but John said he didn't do it. So there were legitimate concerns.
So that would apply to Article 10, which is R3 zoning, and Article 11, which is R4 district. Well, that's also inconsistent, but, and is that, so would that mean just removing those two sections?
It would, leaving those two tables as is. Yeah.
Well, but then there's discussion
Yeah,
in sections.
and
I think the whole sections would have
Marla,
to
this
be
is
removed.
Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just real quick, hopefully you can hear me okay. But I read through what the planning commission was recommending for those two tables and making R3, the original, going back to the original R3 and R4. And they did seem to have some very valid concerns, and I wouldn't be opposed to moving in that direction of keeping the tables but putting them back in their original state. I think that's sort of what Chuck is saying too.
Yeah, just my question is, there are also changes in the narrative. Are those reflective of the changes in the table? And if so, the whole section would have to be removed.
No, I think from my reading of it, they seem to be separate. The table, changes to the table one is not dependent upon the other, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, for example, on page 10, paragraph B, it refers to table 170-56C, which is the table we're going to remove. So
No,
if we
we're
have,
not removing it, we're just leaving it the same. We're not modifying it.
but I think that the narrative has been modified. That's my concern, and that's a question for Peter. Is the narrative in those sections consistent with the new table or with the old table?
Well, I'm going to parse this even further.
Okay.
unfortunately. I think, if the planning commission has issues with the changes, and the changes, I believe came from me, based on, my review of several other ordinances and looking at similar sized lots with similar sized dwellings on them, and trying to find something that I think was a little more doable. But if they want to keep the maximum building coverage number and the maximum impervious surface coverage numbers the same, that's the impression I got reading the minutes and everything. But there are other changes in these tables that probably need to take place. Such, in the headings, I've added, we have dwelling type right now. Well, there's also use types in that heading. The minimum lot width for a two-family detached doesn't make sense, needs to be adjusted. The side yards requirements, we need to get rid of the aggregate side yard. It's unnecessary and it becomes confusing when you have a property with more than two side yards, which is very possible and happens a lot. We need to, I added in the table 56C, it has a line, a rows, all, that currently says all other uses. However, elsewhere in our ordinance, it accepts out parks and recreation areas from those requirements, so we need a table to say that. So I find if we want to take this table and not have the maximum building coverage numbers or the maximum impervious surface coverage numbers change, that's up to the board. But I would actually recommend that the other changes in the table be maintained because those are necessary, because right now the table doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it was discussed a little bit, why you did some of that. I mentioned that in
Yeah.
the meeting. So basically what you're saying is to leave, make all the changes, but leave the 2 columns of numbers, coverage, building coverage, and impervious numbers at the same percentage levels for now.
If that's what's concerning the planning commission, yes.
That was the major concern.
Okay,
I'm
and then
fine with that.
for R3 and R4.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm fine with what Chuck just suggested too.
okay, so Peter, can you make those
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
changes and please mark them in some color that is identifiable?
Yes.
Okay,
So are we all good though on Terry and
Yeah.
Mass?
I follow.
And we're good moving that one stream discharge to the bottom, right?
to 12. Not to the
Well,
absolute
right,
bottom.
right.
Yeah.
And Peter, you have Carol's memo?
I do have her memo. I guess the only other question on that, on the memo, is she does have language that she highlighted in yellow.
Right.
We talked about, the non-repair, that was explained. And then the final one, are inconsistent with other applicable ordinances, increases disturbances of natural resources, or is not administratively feasible. Do you want to include that sort of language? My only concern here is we're just providing kind of more outs. I just see people being, the more kind of reasons we give to avoid the list, the more chances someone can come up with a way to, game the system so they get the type of unlock system they want or need, rather than what we're really looking for. I understand fully what Carol's concerns are. I think maybe if you want to keep these exceptions in there, I'd maybe add additional language, basically giving the board the discretion to decide whether or not something applies or doesn't.
Sort of like you've done already with that asterisk at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Okay,
Fine by me?
so we will also see that.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, any other,
Will we be able to see it by next week?
Yes, nice one. Yeah,
Please.
I
by Monday?
hope to have it to you by Friday.
That would be even better. Thank you. Okay, any other questions from the board on the ordinance?
No.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. Carol, it was brought to your attention, I think it was page 32 and 34, I didn't bring my notes with me, and thank you guys for handling all that table conversation on R3 and 4 since I didn't have those notes. But there were apparently a couple of areas that still had the 740526, which was the EDU payment, and you happened to verify at the planning commission those page numbers, and that your staff would be updating and correcting, or, I don't want to say correcting, putting the right numbers where they belong.
Mr. Wolf, that's the Gosh and Hoppin watershed study, that's not what we're discussing right now.
Okay,
That's
great.
not on the agenda.
Sounds good. Like I said, I didn't have my notes with me, so.
I see a hand up. Is that you, Brian?
Yep, good evening, this is Brian Hill, 11 Zieglerville Road. My question resorts in the solicitor's last comment as to an individual or builder. My question is, was that towards a builder or an individual homeowner? Because I can guarantee you I was not gaming the system to get the system I have on my property. I am looking for a system that will work, that is functional and cost-effective to me, but I would caution, is that question resorting towards more of a new development where we're concerned about making sure that they're not gaming the system, or a new homeowner or a homeowner looking for a replacement?
That comment doesn't cover replacement, as Carol discussed. The list does not involve a replacement system.
All right, I appreciate the clarification there. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, if there's nothing else on this topic. Oh, go ahead, Diane. And could you please come to the microphone? Thank you.
I have this question just because I don't understand. So the EAFs are in the zoning portion of the omnibus? Or are they in Saldo? So
Zoning.
They're in Saldo?
No, zoning.
Zoning. So if somebody's first looking to see what they can do with the land, and they're thinking their land falls under R1 or R2, if they knew before they went to Saldo that the EAFs have to be taken into consideration first before you know what buildable size you have, wouldn't that benefit everyone to have that statement in front of every single one of those sections, just so people understand what it's saying? And I do understand that Peter's saying a lot of people are going to have a lot more experience, but you never know. You know, somebody may say, hey, I've got this one lot. What can I do with it? It's got, you know, some slopes, some other EAF things on it. Oh, look, I did the calculations. I could probably get 2 lots out of it, and now they're going on to Saldo. So I would just say that it makes sense to put that there first, or else you don't know what kind of buildable site you have to begin with, whether you're a developer of 2 lots or 15 or 1 that you own and don't know what you want to do with. And then the other thing is I just want to understand under R3 and R4, everything's just going to revert to the wording that was there originally. So there's really no rewriting that has to be done under the R3 and R4. So the chart will be what it currently is in our zoning, and the words that refer to R3 and R4 will be the same also. Is
No.
that correct?
No.
No, the changes in the omnibus are what's being proposed. Everything staying in the omnibus is staying the same, except the numbers for building coverage and the numbers for impervious surface. Those are not being changed by the omnibus, but
They're
everything
just-
else is being changed by the omnibus.
Right, so that chart doesn't have to be redone, you're just leaving the chart that's already there in our current.
No, that is not correct.
We don't have a current,
No, the chart
Jason,
is
can you
gonna be-
can you put those pages up? Would that,
The
is that
chart's
possible?
gonna be redone as it's shown in the omnibus ordinance, except all the numbers in the column for building coverage and all the numbers in the column for impervious surface are not being changed. So they're the same as currently in our zoning ordinance.
okay, I think I understand better.
So here,
So the building lot size and all that's gonna stay as was in our old,
these
No.
numbers here, see how they're all being changed to right there? These changes and these changes are not happening.
There are percentages.
Everything else is happening.
so I thought, and I might have misunderstood at the planning commission, I thought they were also talking about the minimal lot area also staying the same as in the old zoning. That's what I heard, but I don't know. I
Yeah,
believe.
the only ones being changed are here, and I think actually Carol made that recommendation, so maybe she can explain why that means.
Okay, so that actually came to my recollection from the county planner, who had
Yeah.
a really good point. You want the appearance and the balance to be the same as the single-family detached, which is higher on the list. So if you had the 2 homes that 5,000 each that are connected, it would look similar in dimension and appearance to the single-family. So
Okay.
that actually went up. So that went from 4,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet in lot size.
Yeah, and I thought that was something that they discussed, and I don't know what's in their notes.
They didn't have they acknowledged it, but they didn't have a strong opinion on it, as I
No strong
remember.
opinion,
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, thank you for answering those questions. And I still wish that Peter would be able to go to the planning commission meetings every once in a while so that, well, you know the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. All right, I think that was the last question on this topic. So the next item on the agenda is the 2022 Montgomery County Hazard Mitigation Update. Jason?
Okay, so this is a plan that's done every 5 years. The last county plan was done in 2017. Lower Frederick Township did not adopt the hazard mitigation plan until November 3rd, 2021. This allows the township to receive aid for post-disaster damages. This was sent out in June by Drew Shaw, the environmental planning manager for Montgomery County, letting municipalities know it was approved by FEMA. Our ENC, Patrick Roberts, asked the board to adopt the updated plan. We submitted no mitigation projects for this update. Carol confirmed she was not aware of any township projects being submitted, and I didn't see anything in the document. That's something that can happen during a hazard mitigation project or update if we've got a major type of stormwater project that will obviously mitigate some type of hazard. What we've been doing would be probably considered more minor, and we wouldn't have known that when this started. And the board can adopt this at its next general meeting if it wishes. The document is 300 plus pages, so it is quite the lengthy read.
Right. So just to summarize, this is a Montgomery County plan. By us adopting it, if we need it, we can apply for aid if we have a weather-related or any kind of disaster, and we want to claim for damages. So this just allows us to do something potentially in the future, and the recommendation is that we approve it. I think we approved this a couple years ago.
Yes.
Late, but we did. Is there any discussion from the board? Any questions?
Yeah, Chuck Geiser. So are
None
we,
here.
are we currently out of compliance? In other words, right now, we haven't approved this 2022 version, but we approved the 2017 version. Is there like a grace period or?
Well, the county just finished this, and it would have gone through FEMA, so I hate to assume, but I would assume that the current plan, it would still be in effect until this is adopted. So I would think this would probably not be something we might want to drag our feet on, but I didn't ask the question, and it wasn't in any of the questions that were asked by anyone else. The county has a current plan. Yes, it's a 5-year process, but it also took them probably a year to put this together and update,
So to be safe, it would probably be good to vote on it as soon as possible and adopt it, right?
that would be my recommendation. I mean, this is standard for, this is what we did in Bucks County. It's standard for the county to do this. And so that the municipalities are not doing this kind of planning essentially on their own.
Got it. All right.
And especially since it's going to be August next week and we are in hurricane season. I shouldn't say that word, but I did, sorry. Is it okay with the board that we vote on this today?
It's fine with me.
Yep. Dan, did you have anything you want to add? Sorry.
No, it would be fine with me that we vote on it today, since it's for the township's own protection.
Okay. Would someone like to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Great. Supervisor Sachs made the motion, Supervisor Byrd made the second, and that is to approve the Montgomery County 2022 Hazard Mitigation Plan adoption.
And that would be resolution 2023 R-17.
Sorry, and that is Resolution 2023 R-17. Thank you. So we'll add that also to the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, the next item is our Monco 2040 grant, so we've received our paperwork for that.
Okay, so this had been brought up when we were told that we were awarded the grant. We were waiting on the grant paperwork. We did receive that at the beginning of July. Carol had asked to, we had this on our last work session agenda, to move forward. We wanted to wait on the paperwork. So this would get that project moving forward. We must also have this signed paperwork to the county planning by mid-August, which would be the actual grant application agreement.
Okay.
We would have until June 30th, 2025 to actually complete the project.
So is there an urgency to approve this today?
We could wait till next Tuesday and still have that to the county by mid-August when the 45 days is up.
What would the board like to do?
I don't have a problem doing it tonight if it gives our.
Is there a reason to hold it up?
Yeah.
No, I guess not. No. I have one question.
I'd say we should just do it tonight.
Yeah, I have one question for Carol. I think what we need to approve tonight also is to authorize our engineer to do some of the work to get this going, including permitting. The amount you're proposing is between $14,000 and $16,000. Is that consistent with our original proposal? I just don't remember.
Yeah, actually, in my records, the board previously approved $16,000 for preliminary design and permitting. To date, we've spent roughly $10,500 of that. So today, we went ahead and did soil testing to start the stormwater management design. So if it pleases the board, we will continue forward with the project design under the original approval. And work towards submission to the Conservation District and submission of the GP7.
So we don't actually have to approve any funding for our engineer
I
tonight?
apologize for that. That was a miscommunication.
Okay.
That I had with Carol.
Okay, so we just need to move to authorize the chair to sign the 2040 Monco Grant Funding Agreement on behalf of the Board of Supervisors.
Correct.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great, so Supervisor Byrd.
Dan Orff will second. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'll catch you next time, Dan, sorry.
Okay.
It's a little
That's
bit of a-
all right.
Little bit of a delay here.
That's okay.
So Supervisor Byrd made the motion, Supervisor Sachs made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion
Aye.
passes. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, that's great. And for those of you who aren't aware of this project, we're going to be, we got grant funding from Montgomery County, and we're going to be constructing a sidewalk between the township building to the firehouse, and that will make it safer for folks to get up Spring Mount Road, and hopefully eventually we'll get all the way to the Perkiomen Trail. All right, next item is the sewer extension project. We need to have a resident meeting.
Okay, so as the board may recall at their last meeting, we gave a presentation kind of giving an update where the project's at, and how things will be moving forward. The direction from the board at the time was to set a date for it to have a special meeting for those residents. It's really like it's a staff meeting that would involve the township engineer, the sewer engineer, myself, Penvest representative. I don't believe we would need anyone else there as far as the staff goes. We would send mailers out to those residents along the sewer extension project, and then have that meeting. It'd be primarily an information meeting, and then, you know, obviously taking any questions or concerns, or as far as that may come, we'll create another presentation that kind I guess, buttons things up as far as what the next, I guess, stage is going to be, and when that, and further when that may happen.
Great. And so Penn Vest will be at that meeting to answer questions about financing.
Correct.
Great. And also, just to clarify, this will not be a public meeting. It is a meeting for affected residents along the sewer extension route.
Yes, that's how
Yeah.
we're treating it.
Okay,
Um,
great.
The date that we picked was August 16th. That's what works for the PennFest representative, and we have no other meeting conflicts that night.
Okay, so you're looking for us to just approve sending out notices to affected residents?
Correct.
I just have one question. Your recommended motion says Fulmer and Riverside. Do we need to include like Avenue B and,
So as far as the original mailing list that went out was, I think we had over 100 addresses on it. So this would include any property that's in proximity to the project. So it would include, we had Babington on that list, obviously along with Avenue B, most of Fulmer, and then, and Riverside, so.
okay, so this is just for convenience, we're just calling it the Fulmer Road and Riverside Avenue Sewer Extension Project?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the board?
Nope.
Dan?
No, none here,
Okay,
none here.
go ahead, Warren.
I have a couple questions about the project itself. Is it the appropriate time, or should I wait for public comment?
Do you mind waiting for public comment?
No
If
problem.
it's not related to this particular topic?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make this motion, since it's probably my turn. I move to authorize notices to be mailed to residents residing along the Fulmer Road and Riverside Avenue Sewer Extension Project for a special information meeting to be held on Wednesday, August 16, starting at 7 p.m. at the Township Building. Do I have a second?
Chuck Geiser will say.
Okay.
Oh.
Dan Orff will second.
Yeah.
No,
Dan.
I'm going to,
Give it to
Dan,
Dan.
it's yours, okay? Sorry.
Drat.
All right. No, we're going to give it to you.
You got it. Dan.
Okay, thank you.
So Supervisor Hexter made the motion, and Supervisor Orff made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, all right, and that,
We'll look to get those out by the end of the week, or
Okay.
certainly the beginning of the next week.
okay, great. And that brings us to our 2023 mid-year fiscal review. Do you have a question regarding this particular item?
I just want to make sure that the people on Zoom can see what Jason's sharing with us. I don't know if that's possible.
I'm working on it.
Good, thank you.
So if anyone on Zoom cannot see this PowerPoint presentation, if they can just put something in the chat, otherwise we'll assume you can see it.
We don't have it, right?
I don't think so. No. Wait a minute. No. No.
Okay. So this is the 2023 fiscal year mid-year in review. General fund.
Jason, can you just collapse the participants thing?
Sorry. See,
I think you just click on that one button.
There we
two
go.
Thanks.
screens here.
We don't have this in our packet, so we're looking at it as you are.
So for the general fund, the township outperformed its revenue budget by $107,312. It's outperformed its expense budget by $130,129. Revenue summary, as of June 30th, general funds received $1.5 million in revenue, which is 7.7% over budget. Revenue highlights. We're over budget on real estate transfer, earned income tax, franchise fees, interest from banking, charges for services, state police and magistrate funds. We really don't have any lows. We've had about as good a half a year as we could have revenue-wise. Knock on wood. This is just a percentage breakdown. As the board's probably aware by now, most of our revenue comes from our income tax and real estate taxes. I think these percentages show that. As far as the expense summary, total is $999,490, 11.5% under budget. As far as our highlights or lowlights, looking at expenses, we've been running over for health insurance, police officer wages, police vehicle repair, police capital expense, and workers' comp insurance. As you can see, we've got several line items where we're either under or, as I've been reporting in my monthly, we're on pace. Unless you want me to read through
Go,
those.
can you read?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that would be insurance. We're under insurance, property and liability, admin office, technology. Oh, by the way, these would be your bigger numbers as far as being under. Township building capital construction, township building contract services, building inspector zoning, which kind of surprised me because I know we've continued to stay busy. Public work wages, public works vehicle repair, snow removal, which I think is an obvious one, and then roads and bridges, contractors and materials. We haven't to date really done any major road work outside of the mitigation work and the Fulton Road project, which is actually in July. This is a percent breakdown of our general fund expense. Once again, our labor and O&M police 44%, public works 24%. Those are always going to be our highest percent of our expense budget. And you can see the rest of the percentages as it gets down from labor, or from admin, labor, and O&M through the other line items. Overall fund balance, and this includes our CDs, $2.595 million. So far, halfway through the year, our net income is $501,423. Summary for the sewer fund. The sewer fund outperformed its revenue budget by $338,798. The sewer fund exceeded its expense budget by $19,382. Revenue summary, total $779,933, 76.8% over budget. Our highs, sewer rental, sewer user charge, interest from banking. We did receive a FEMA reimbursement and insurance reimbursement from IDA. Lows, once again, none on the revenue side. Expense summary, total of $448,367, 4.5% over budget. Expense highlights, we're over in health insurance, engineering, utilities, repair and maintenance for both the pump station and the treatment plant. As far as under, legal is the only significant line item that we're under. And I did want to note, as I pointed out, I think a month ago, we did make the 2020 and 2021 transfer for the general fund for the labor. I'm most likely do the 2022 because the fund is managing itself pretty well. Unless the board has any reason for me to hold off on that. This is a revenue expense breakdown. It's obviously, as far as the sewer fund, our FEMA and insurance reimbursement skews the percentages. Generally, we're making most of the money from the quarterly sewer billing. As far as our expense, debt service, I think this is probably in line, certainly through half a year since we had one of our big lump sum loan payments, and then the O&M for the sewer along with the labor. Fund balance as of 6/30, $730,672. Net income of $331,568. As far as the capital reserve and liquid fuels fund balances and net income, the capital reserve is at $100,430. It's made $1,800 this year in in interest. Liquid fuels fund balance is at $517,902. That net income is at $150,375. That's primarily for not having snow events at the beginning of the year, and we don't have any of our road projects coming out of liquid fuels this year, so I don't expect that to change much since we were not able to do the full road paving project out of liquid fuels, as the board may recall. These are the remaining fund balances. You have open space available balance is $137,797. The hydrant fund is at $23,000. Developer escrow fund is $1.594 million. And the ARPA COVID relief fund is available is $397,066. The open space allocation, there's $69,268 that's allocated for
A grant commitment.
It's, yeah. DV, what am I drawing?
DCED?
No, it's a DC.
DCNR.
Thank you.
DCNR.
Sorry, I apologize. And then the ARPA relief fund allocation, the $111,540 is for the sidewalk project allocation. Projects, capital, highlights admin and township property. The admin, hiring of the administrative assistant, Becky Strawbridge. Township building, we got the approval for the meeting room, audiovisual improvements. I'm hopeful that will happen over the next month. And I did throw the sewer in since I had space here. We have continue to have the Fulmer Riverside Road sewer extension projects. We've had 2 sewer connections, and we're finishing up the Hurricane Ida repairs for the Delphi pump station. As far as the police and road departments, we hired an Officer Bacon, new workstation computer, and we got officer lockers for the police officers. Public Works, the concrete curb mitigation installation on Main Street and Spring Mountain Road was completed, and we started planning for Zieglerville Road stormwater project. As far as the conclusions, I think the numbers speak for themselves. We've had a very, we started out the year very well. We have had some bigger things not hit us yet that will be hitting us in July, and so I would expect this to change. But as far as I can tell, revenue-wise, running ahead of where we are budget-wise, I expect we should be fine unless something catastrophic happens. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Could you go back a few slides for your pie chart for the general fund?
Yeah.
I was trying to read.
Sorry. And I'll send this to you guys.
Were we going to put this on our website?
Yeah.
That
Did
one?
you want the
That
expense?
one. Okay, so the big pie piece, this is fire, ambulance, and...
Fire and ambulance would be at 9%. So that's,
Okay.
now keep in mind that includes the pass-through for the fire tax. So kind of, but that's why if you see the 9%, they match. The only thing that really usually differs is we have the insurance payments that we pay. So that's why those percentages are as they should be, since our dedicated the dedicated tax fully goes to the fire and the ambulance.
Okay, and then that big blue one, just at like 1 o'clock.
Oh,
That's,
you know what? Oh, jeez, sorry. That would be the admin labor. I apologize, that should have been over here.
No,
Oh, okay,
please.
that should be
Okay.
over on the right-hand side. Okay, that would make sense. All right, I was just, and then if you go back one more is the revenues, right, wasn't it before the expenses? Okay. So then our EIT were about 37%.
Yes.
So, yeah, I got something recently from our state senator. She says she wants to get rid of the real estate tax and make it all revenue-based. That's what she wants to push for. Personally, I think it should be a balance. I think it's misguided, but I don't know how that would affect our township if something like that were to happen.
Would affect every township.
Yeah, affect our, yeah, but I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of who's paying what,
So that percentage obviously will, EIT and real estate will kind of trade off because we receive most of our real estate revenue at the first half of the year. So, EIT at some point will surpass real estate, but, I mean, you're basically, to put it in perspective, you're taking your police budget, and if we don't have real estate tax, you're trying to figure out how to pay for your police.
right,
Just as a, not that, but as far as putting it in perspective, as far as what that, and as you said, most of the smaller municipalities, you have very little, you have very little in the ways of making revenue if you don't have enough commercial,
Right.
depending on what you have going on. So I'm not sure how most of the state could survive that, but I know that's been
It may
passed,
not go
that's
anywhere.
been talked about.
it may not go anywhere, but I don't really think it's thought through in a practical sense. Not to say that I don't think that there should be a good balance. Other states are a lot more progressive in especially elderly property owners and giving them incentives. Pennsylvania, for whatever reason, it doesn't occur to them that they should do a whole lot.
It would be my opinion, especially regarding real estate, your school taxes is what
Yep.
really makes us stand apart, I think, to some other states. I think most people, you know, if they're aware of how much of their real estate is, or how little is actually going to the municipality, I think that would be one of those, you know, that's something that the state's been, you know, when you're looking at real estate revenue. But as you've mentioned, Chuck, I mean, I know they've been talking about the retirees and what you can do for tax incentives, and it is one of those balancing acts because they still require services, they still require everything that
Right.
your working residents require. In some cases more.
Yep.
So I think that's part of the, how you balance that and how you try to make that fair, but that's for a different legislation.
Fair enough. I didn't mean to
Okay.
distract you that much.
Okay, any questions from the board? Yeah, thank you, Jason, that was very helpful, it was a really good overview, and we'll all hope that it remains along the same trend lines.
I can only hope that all of the budget reviews are close to this.
Yep, go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns, Ziegler Railroad. So Jason, you talked about the 22 payment for the sewer fund back to the capital fund as a possibility. Hopefully the board would, let you go ahead and do that. This has been something that's been happening over time. Is it something that we can't just stop and get it clarified each year?
So my expectation with this next budget cycle is the sewer fund, based on where the revenue is at with the rate increase that was instituted, I believe it was the beginning of last year, I think, or it was last year at some point.
Second
The year
quarter.
It does
Yeah.
seem to be having enough of that impact to cover the labor as far as what's been coming out of the general fund. So I don't expect that to be something that's going to accumulate year over year. That's going to be something that's going to be able to be paid on a regular quarterly basis.
Okay. following up from your statement at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, which was very minute what you said, but you had made a mention that the self-liquidating debt report, and also, I believe, Mr. Byrd had questioned the EDU breakdown and how much of that was going to be able to go to the capital fund for those things. So maybe I was thinking ahead that that was something that you were working into this topic tonight, but I didn't see any of that up there.
That's gonna be part of the sewer discussion, but I still have to do the legwork on that.
Okay, and then lastly, I've asked this, and thank you for bringing this up earlier in the year. Right now, the hydrant fund is at $23,000. I believe when I spoke to Josh Embry, and I think Jason, you might have clarified this. What are we paying? Somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 is what SWA is charging us.
SBA is, yeah, I think it's $750 a month, so, or $770. So it's roughly that.
So basically, if we stop, which we already collected for this year, we should be able to give all the residents a break next year on the fire hydrant by not collecting anything. And I don't know if you've ever found the documents.
Not yet.
So the documents that were in a resolution years and years ago, 1980s, whenever the hell it was, it only gave a portion. It states in that document somewhere that none of us can find and look at. But since that document was provided, anybody that has a lot that was built, or if you want to take into consideration like Arcadia Station, so you have 39 homes there and you know, however many other lots that we brought in. As those new homes come on, they're not getting fed into the tax collector for whatever reason. Apparently, however it was stated before. So, you know, if the new developments come in, there's a hockey track. If we don't straighten this out, they get water, they're gonna have hydrants, the sewer authority's gonna up their charge to us, and it's not fair to the existing customers that were in this resolution from the past to have to pay for that. Now, here again, this is a very minor dollar figure, it's nothing, okay? I mean, I've been here 33 years, but it cost me $250 in 33 years, it's not worth mentioning. But the problem is, we should be worried about it, we should understand it, and we really shouldn't be carrying a $23,000 surplus, you know, at that point. So I know we have work sessions for a reason, and, you know, hopefully at a work session coming up, you guys can figure that out before the next billing cycle goes out, and hopefully we can find a document and do whatever needs to be done. Thank you.
Yeah, this, if I can just jump in, this sounds to me that something that staff can work out and then report back to us what your proposed solution is.
Yeah, I mean, it's been on my list.
Okay.
I've tried to look, I've looked for it, I've not found that documentation. But it's certainly on the list, and my hope and expectation is that through this budget cycle that we will be on top of it.
Okay.
And that the board will be able to make a informed decision with how to proceed with it for next year.
Great.
But I mean, if I understand what Mr. Burns just said, that he feels that there are some people who are not currently paying into it who should be.
That would be correct.
And so hopefully your report will address that.
So the only thing I've been able to find was an update was done in like 2010 or 11, but it just was a spreadsheet. It didn't have, I've got no like detail where the numbers came up with. I mean, clearly the fund is far surpassing what the expense is, so I'm not, you know, that's why until we find the original paperwork that kind of spells out how we're supposed to be, you know, what we're supposed to be charging people, and I would expect how to proceed in the future when you get more people on the system, so to speak.
Right.
Um,
So it may require some calls to SBA.
You know, I haven't thought of asking if they have, I mean, I don't know, I don't necessarily know why they have it. I mean, we've got our hydrants, we're paying the bills, so it comes through the general fund, so I don't know that it's something, but it's been on my list since I started here. It's just been a matter of not being able to find the documents, as of yet.
It also seems like it should be a tax collector issue, since putting people on the tax rolls and collecting the tax is not really.
It is a tax cut, but the formula is coming through from the town, is coming from the administration, so.
Okay, all right.
You know, I know our tax collector is collecting whatever the last update was done, that's what he's basing the collection on.
Okay, so we'll look forward to updates on this in the future.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, one last thing on that. I
Oh,
mean, maybe Peter can answer the question. If this was a
Sorry.
resolution, Peter, back in the day, with the update that Jason just talked about, the county should have all that information, correct? Shouldn't be that hard of a thing to go down and try to find it there instead of searching through
I
100 boxes. in
I
the
have
back.
no idea. Yeah, they should, but I have no idea if they do or do not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, sir, is this a budget question?
It goes hand in hand with it, I believe.
Okay, would you mind coming to the
No, I don't mind at all.
microphone, please? Thank
I don't
you.
mind at all.
Just state your name and address.
Josh DuBois, 9BF. So my question to you guys is, can we go back to the budget of the sewer project by chance? And is this on the minutes of the meeting, or can it be?
Any public comment is in the minutes.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank
That's
you.
why we're asking for your name and
Yeah,
address.
thank you, ma'am, I didn't know that. So anyway.
Spell your name for me?
DUBOIS, Dubois. So, you're under budget for the sewer project, correct?
No, sir, this is our sewer budget to run our sewer plant.
Okay, regardless, I was just thinking, like, is there money to fix the driveways properly like we were promised or not?
So that's a separate question from our budget. So,
Okay. Second question though, real quick
Okay.
though, I want to know if the board has been let known that we have issues on B Avenue when it comes to the driveway and them trespassing and damaging my property. Was that brought to any of your attention?
generically, yes, it was, not all the
Okay.
details.
Because you guys called my uncle to confirm he was a lawyer, but I never heard that you guys were gonna come fix my driveway, so I was just curious. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I think our manager has been working with you on your driveway question.
I've had no callbacks for months on that, months.
All right. And any more questions on the budget? If not, we can move to public comment. Anyone on Zoom?
Stop the screen share.
Looks like a no. Okay, that leads us to public comment. Bob, go ahead.
Bob Burns, Zieglerville Road. Peter, I should have brought this up earlier when we were talking about Melbourne Hills, but I believe I asked you at the last meeting if the NPDS permit that was required, that they had gotten before all this, was needed to be updated. And you looked it up and said, no, that did not have to be done. Your office, I believe, I don't have my notes with me, but my memory serves me, it was January 23rd of 2023, sent a letter, 3-page letter to Jason, letting him know about all the different changes on the NPDS, and by recollection, I think it was on page 2, there was 3 references to that. So I'm just wondering if your position has changed, that they do have to go back and issue a brand-new NPDES permit from Montgomery County?
I can answer this to an extent.
Bob, I have no idea what letter you're talking about. I'm sorry, I don't remember it. What I read from you to you for the last meeting was an excerpt from the settlement agreement. That's all I was saying. I wasn't saying whether or not they're required to get a new one. That's something that Montgomery County and DEP is a requirement of them. all the settlement agreement says is they need to have one in hand, whether or not it's a new one, or an amended one, or the one they already had, it doesn't matter. As long as they have one that meets Montgomery County and DEP, that's all we care about.
Okay, great, thank you.
Go ahead, Warren.
Two things, comment. I noticed that Dolly has gotten their materials out of the Colonial Park. They took away their storage box and the pump and all that stuff. So is it okay for us to use the park now?
That's a very good question. Jason? Because I know we had it closed.
Are they completely out of there?
No, there's miscellaneous junk laying around, and it'd be nice if they would clean it up, but
Well, that's,
their equipment's all out.
So we still need to review, clean up with them for that part, but we would take a look at it, or have my inspector take a look at it in the coming days, because it does seem a shame not to reopen that.
Yeah, especially when we still have some nice
Take a look at the
weather.
status out there and make a recommendation.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I know the summer's not almost over, but it'd be nice if people could use it, so maybe we can have an update on that at our next meeting?
Yes.
Great, okay.
And the other question for Carol, do you want to tell us about the road widening on Fulmer Road? Is there a story about that that we don't know? I was just surprised to see that the road was widened when all the previous discussions that we've had about that, we were not going to widen it.
Well, I guess the simple answer is it wasn't designed for widening. By the time they were out there to work on the road, frankly, it wasn't very clear where the old edge of road was anymore for all the construction that had happened out there. I think it's safe to say that they pushed that pavement out where they could to make it a more usable road. But there was no physical design to widen the road as part of the project, but it
Wasn't
was
actually in
wider
the plan.
places. It wasn't, no, it was not designed into there was no engineered plan for widening the road.
Well, one of the things that I'm curious about, the reason that you had called for the milling and leaving the millings there and compacting them was that the base of the road wasn't adequate. But now we have all that widened part that doesn't have any base under it. So are we concerned about how that's going to hold up?
No, that was pushed out over stone base. So the stone base was spread, and then the pavement was placed on top of it.
Well, there's no base, there's just the
There's-
millings that were spread out wider than the road.
The millings are your 3 inches of stone base.
And you
There was-
think
it was-
that that's adequate?
It was pavement on dirt before, and now you've got millings creating your 3 inches of stone base.
Hmm.
And then we've got 3 inches of asphalt on top of that. So you've got a lot more road structure there now than you had before the project.
I don't know, it looked to me like we were just paving over top of dirt, but
Well,
if
you're
you say
probably
it's
seeing
good.
the asphalt spill at the edges and cover up some of those stones, but they had a wider stone base there when they started.
Okay. That's a quick question.
Sure.
Thank you, Warren. Anyone else from the public? Go ahead, sir. So, I'm sorry, can you please come to the microphone? We have some folks on Zoom, and they can't hear you if you don't come to the microphone.
Dane Giannini at South Station
Mhm.
Road. I have some of the same concerns as Josh from B Avenue. Recently, Carol, we had a site meeting with, discussing the restoration of the driveway.
Mhm.
And she had agreed that to make a new proposal or a change that there would be a wearing course placed on the whole driveway where the easement was dug, but only a portion, half of that driveway would be, have a base put down. The reason she was mentioning that only half was deserving of a base is because there was concrete in the area that they're putting the base, but there was that same concrete throughout the whole driveway. So the whole driveway consists of the same materials, and I'm just confused on why the base would be offered on one area but not the other. And the proposal was appreciated, that they would go ahead and do a wearing course over the whole driveway of the area that was affected, but not a base on the whole area. So I'm just trying to understand why a base wouldn't be provided in the whole space that is being compromised as far as where the wear course is being offered.
Anyone want to make an attempt to answer that?
Well, I've actually generated numerous memorandums on exactly this with a lot of documentation and images of what was there before. So there's one leg of the driveway that was originally concrete. To my memory, about 3 to 4 inches thick. And it was in very rough condition. And then there's another portion of the driveway that when paved in 2015, my surveyors marked as asphalt. When we got there to start this project, it was rather crumbled asphalt and aggregate. And when they were digging through that section, you could see that it was essentially a wearing course on top and very debris type materials for the base underneath. So where the length of driveway had been concrete, we were originally anticipating restoring the trench surface with concrete, but because that concrete was in such poor condition, and because concrete takes many days to set up and become strong, we are instead proposing to remove the concrete and put in a base course to replace the concrete, and a wearing course on top of that to restore that area. And the base course is because we're removing those chunks of concrete that are there today, so that would bring it back to a similar level. The other leg of the driveway, we are restoring. The trench area will have base in it because that's how you restore a trench. So we'll have 3 inches of base over the trench. And then what we included in the change order negotiated with Dolly was enough wearing force to do the width of that driveway to make one uniform top surface on those 2 segments of driveway. So I believe our easement agreement requires us to restore to equal condition to what was there before we started. In my opinion, we're looking at restoring to what's a better condition than where we started, but obviously we are not seeing eye to eye on that.
Does that
There was a
answer your
verbal-
question?
There was a verbal agreement where she told, when the easement was signed, she verbally told me that I would have a new driveway in the whole area where the trench was dug. And I had to since fight or argue or whatever to get the wearing course offered to the second leg. For the longest time, they didn't want to touch the second leg with the wearing course, but now recent that has been proposed in the change order that they would be doing that after a drug out, headache. And now I'm just not understanding because if you go there, you can see pictures clear as day that there's concrete throughout the whole driveway. It's not just in the area where she's focused on where the base is being offered. There's concrete throughout the whole driveway. Some of the area has been covered with stone and millings, so it doesn't maybe appear as clearly as there's concrete in the whole driveway, but you can see very obviously, I have photos if you like, that shows the areas where concrete are exposed other than the area that she's focused on with where the base is being offered now. So I just
Yeah, I don't think this is the place for us to resolve this. I mean, you can work on this with staff. But I think what I heard from Carol was that the concern was that since concrete takes multiple days to set, that it would be more beneficial for you to be able to use it to do asphalt on the whole area. But again, I think the board is not really able to resolve this. I think you ought to work with staff and continue to discuss on this topic.
Yeah, the asphalt's not the concern, it's just the base. I don't want half of it to have a base and half of it not, to worry about part of it deteriorating sooner than the other, because half was base and half wasn't, when it was all the same material to begin with. So that's just the
Okay.
concern.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank
And just, just to mention this again, there are a lot of new people here. So Pennsylvania law requires that we reflect in our minutes any comments made by a person from the public. So as long as we have your name and address, you don't have to state your home number, just your street name. That will be in the official minutes. So just for all of you, that is our requirement, and that is what we do. Go ahead, sir. Can you come to the microphone?
Josh DuBois, B. Ave. I just want to go on record and stating my neighbor, Harry, he would be here. Harry Long's been a long-time resident of this town. He can't be with us today, medical reasons. That's none of my, I can't put his business out. I know for a fact, he laid concrete down that whole drywall and asphalt, and it's a private driveway. It's file under private drive. Those triaxles loading that type of weight has damaged our driveway, point blank period. My other question for you guys is, how are we going to resolve the construction workers that were showing up before 7 o'clock multiple times, parking on my property, and damaging my property? I've reached out several times, I've had no answers regarding that issue. I just want to know, what are we going to do about it? I also have Ring doorbells, videos, and pictures. I've presented multiple times to Jason. I haven't heard anything back. I had to borrow my neighbor's Bobcat and fix the ruts. They said, well, why didn't you tell me and we would have fixed it to you? Well, my whole thing is, I don't want you on my property at all. I already had them trespass multiple times. So how are we going to resolve this?
Does that require working with Dolly?
Yeah, like before, this is an issue that needs to be worked out among staff. It's not an issue for a public meeting. Mr. Dubois brought it up, to you, public comment, which is appropriate. I am aware of what's been going on. I've been aware of it for months. And I know Jason's been dealing with it, and he will continue to deal with it at this point in time.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Burns, Igloo Road. Carol, now that the road is wider, will it be receiving, with the contract, does it get the line striping on it, or is that something that's going to have to be done out of our normal contract? Will it be edge lines and double yellow, or what do you got planned?
Line striping is being orchestrated, coordinated by your township roadmaster, so he's setting that up.
Thank you. Do you know if it will be edge lines only, or it'll be?
He's planning edge lines. I believe he's also planning to refresh the speed limit signs throughout the road.
Nice, thank you.
Okay.
Not to take credit for Tom.
Do we have any other public comment? Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. Kamal Francis, 21 Fulton Road. I just have a question about the budget. I believe I was listening to you, Jason, and you said that we have liquid funds. And I was just wondering if it's funding that's the issue for the pavement for B Ave. I believe you said we have some type of funding left in the liquid funds. So it sounds to me that it's an open shut case, that if we could just do one road, one pavement, and just get it over with, everyone would be happy here. We wouldn't go back and forth. It is a one-way easement where you have one pavement, and I believe same way they did the Fulmer Road. You know, part of our driveways was kind of dug out, and they did use the stones. I was watching, because I was trying to make sure that they did it correctly. They put the stones down, and then he put the asphalt on top of it. Now, I don't know about the whole road, but when I was watching, that's what I saw. You know, and like I said, just to make everyone pleased, let's do one driveway. We have the funds to do the one driveway instead of patching it, because the tractors and the movements on that road, you know, it did disrupt something. When you open up a road that was man-made, you tend to disrupt other areas. So the disruption should be handled with by just paving one road, and everyone will be pleased. And that's just all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comment? Nothing on Zoom? Do we have any supervisor comment?
Terry?
Terry?
Yep, so leading up to August 8th, which is the blood drive here at the township from 1 o'clock until 7. The good news is currently it is completely full. All the slots are full. We're working with Miller Keystone to hopefully open up more spots. I'll put out more information. If they can get more spots, we'll start a list of anyone around that day. If someone backs out, faints, cancels, whatever, we can get them in. Also, we'll probably push their site. They have donation options that they can conduct more blood drives in the area. So it'd be great to see people out for something near and dear to our township. Thank you.
Brian, we're past public comment, but if you make it brief, I'll let you go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brian Hill, 11 Zieglerville Road. Just following up on several times the comment of the crosswalk on Zieglerville Road by the builder of the Arcadia station. We were supposed to have some renovations to that so that it wasn't so abrupt in one direction versus the other. Have we had any progress on that? I do appreciate the fact that it does slow down traffic, but it does, jolt you pretty well. So is there any update when that resolution is going to happen?
Brian, you got me. I did email the traffic engineer and the developer asking for updates on that, and I apologize, I did not badger them enough to get a response for tonight, but I will try to get a response for the next meeting, a week from tonight.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, thanks everyone for coming. Meeting's adjourned.
Recording stopped.